Hey everyone, it's Joy here for HoneyBee Stamps. For my card today, I went with a red and white Christmas theme using the Lovley Layers Poinsettia dies. Now I want to start with my background, and I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit by starting with a piece of red cardstock, and then I'm going to use the Lumberjack Plaid Distress ink and just do a little bit of ink blending around the edge. It's not a real stark contrast, but it is noticeable, and I just want to have a little bit of shading and a little shadow effect around the edges. And I'm cheating because I am starting with a piece of colored cardstock. So if you don't want to ink blend something, just start with a lighter colored cardstock and then get your inks out and finish doing the ink blending. So that's how we're going to start this today. We're also going to be using the Christmas Star A2 cover plate to die cut on this, and I'll tell you why I picked this cover plate for this card design. First, let's go with our Lovley Layers poinsettias. Because I'm doing the red and white theme, I'm going to keep these mainly white with a little bit of pink coloring. Now the centers of the poinsettias look a little bit yellowy gold, so I used Y19 and YR15, I believe, to color these. We have two poinsettias I have die cut from Neenah Cardstock. And then I'm going to use R20, R30, and R00. They're fairly light pink colors. Because I want to stick with the red and white theme, I don't want to just leave these white because they will look uncolored and unfinished. And because sometimes you can see some of those pink poinsettias, I just thought I'm going to bring in a little bit of pink so that way this still is going to read white. That is my design choice. So I am adding to the base of the petals. I'm starting with the R20. That first small one has R20 and R30 only. The rest of these will have R20, R30, and R00. Going from darkest to lightest, but I am not coloring the whole petal. Again, I really want this to still read white, but have just a little bit of color. I am going to do this for both of my poinsettias. I will do the second one off camera because there's no need to watch me do this twice. But as you can see, it's blending out nicely. These almost have kind of a peachy pink to it, like the R30 and R00 are a little more peachy pink. So if you don't like that, I would just say, go with something a little more traditional pink. But I think it turned out super lovely. I am going to do the same thing for the leaves. I did die cut 6 leaves as well, and I will use BG90. It's a really light green. And again, I'm not going to color the whole leaf. I'm going to keep it really simple. I'm also only coloring, you guys can see, where there is texture from the die cut, because those are the only leaves you're going to see once you're done layering all of these. So on this background, I don't need to color all of those petals because you are not going to see them, and so this just saves some time. So there's a little tip. Here are those leaves, again using that BG90, keeping it super, super simple. And this is a really light, really pretty green color. If you wanted to go with just a green leaf, then maybe die cut it from a really light color green. If you wanted something a little more colorful, I really wanted to keep it with that whole white look. Okay, now that my background is dry, here is that Christmas Star A2 cover plate. I picked this because it kind of pierces some of the images, but then you have a bunch of these little stars that it die cuts out completely. So it's going to leave you with this polka dot star background. So it's going to bring in more of that white for the red and white themed instead of just having a straight red background. So I really loved it for this, and I think you could use this anytime. I don't even think this has to be just for Christmas. I'm layering that on a piece of white cardstock, and all of this will be adhered to an A2 size card base. But look at how fun that is. Okay, let's get our poinsettias together. I already have one of them together. You're just going to line it up like a puzzle, and you can see where the leaves fit on the next layer and the next layer. So I'm just going to pop those in place. I'm only adding liquid glue in the center. That way I can pop the leaves up a little bit, bend them up, because that's going to give them a little bit more of that 3D look, which is what I'm going to do here. Just lifting some of those up that are layered on top of other ones. And then that just makes them look a little more realistic. But look at how pretty they are. I think they turned out really fabulous, and I really do think that they feel white. Okay, now that we're done with that, we can get going on the sentiment. I am going to use the same red cardstock. I'm using Jingle All the Way stamp and coordinating die. And this sentiment says, soon it will be Christmas Day. I'm prepping it with a powder tool using HoneyBee Stamp's clear embossing ink. I'm using some white embossing powder. I'll sprinkle that on. I do already have my heat tool heated up, so it's nice and hot and it's less likely to warp the paper. And then I can just take, once that's cooled down, a dry towel and buff off all of the anti-static powder tool. I'm going to use the coordinating die to die cut this out. And I love this on the red cardstock. It's going to kind of blend in the background. At the same time, it will be overlapping some of the leaves on, or the petals on the flower. But I love that it's in the red and white. So I already have everything laid out. I like to lay my design out ahead of time, and then I can just lift my images up and add a little bit of glue behind it. So that's all I'm going to do here. We still get to see a lot of the polka dots, so I was kind of making sure my leaves, for the most part, were in between the polka dots. Little polka dot stars is really what they are, because I really wanted to see a lot of that on my design. Then I'm going to add some foam tape behind that sentiment and put it right in the center of this card design between those two poinsettias. And I was thinking about adding some gems or something, but I didn't. I think it was perfectly fine left as is. And look at how that turned out. I am really happy with this card. I think it's a great Christmas card. I think the red and white obviously is just so perfect, and you can't go wrong with that. So thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you enjoyed this project. I hope that you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.